The divorce papers arrived on what should have been our celebration day. 10 years. A decade of building a life together. Of shared dreams and whispered promises. Of believing that love could conquer anything. But apparently love could not conquer his wandering eyes and lying heart. I remember staring at those cold, legal documents spread across our kitchen table. The same table where we had shared countless meals, planned our future, and laughed until our stomachs hurt. The irony was not lost on me. Our 10th anniversary. The day that should have marked a milestone became the day that marked my ending. But I did not cry. Not right away. Instead, I collapsed. Not just physically, though my legs did give out beneath me as I sank onto the cold tile floor. I collapsed entirely. My marriage. My confidence. My voice. My entire sense of self. Everything crumbled in that single devastating moment. The man I had trusted with my heart, my body, my soul, had not only betrayed me but had done so with calculated precision. He had been planning this for months. Maybe years. While I was picking out anniversary gifts and planning a romantic dinner, he was planning his escape. But the divorce itself was just the beginning of my nightmare. What truly shattered me was not his betrayal. It was how everyone else responded to my pain. She is too emotional. I heard my sister whisper to our mother during what I thought was a supportive family dinner. She always needed too much, my former best friend told our mutual acquaintances, as if my need for emotional support during the worst crisis of my life was somehow unreasonable. She is broken, became the whispered consensus among people who had once claimed to love me. The word followed me everywhere. Broken. Like I was a piece of damaged goods that no one wanted to be around. Like my pain was somehow contagious and they might catch it if they stayed too close. My family stopped inviting me to gatherings. Birthday parties happened without me. Holiday celebrations carried on, as if I had never existed. Sunday dinners became exclusive events that somehow never included the broken daughter, sister, cousin. They treated me like I was diseased. Like grief and betrayal were illnesses that might spread through casual contact. Friends I had supported through their own divorces, job losses, and family crises suddenly became unavailable. Phone calls went unreturned. Text messages were read but never answered. Lunch plans were canceled with vague excuses about being busy or overwhelmed. These were women I had held while they cried. Women whose children I had babysat during their emergencies. Women I had loaned money to, driven to appointments, and supported through their darkest moments. But when I needed them most, they vanished like morning mist. The silence was deafening. The abandonment was complete. Even worse was the judgment. Oh, the judgment was relentless and crushing. Maybe if she had been more supportive of his career. I always thought she was a bit much. She should have seen the signs. Perhaps she pushed him away. Every comment felt like a knife twisting deeper into an already gaping wound. They made my husband's infidelity my fault. They made his lies my responsibility. They made his betrayal my failure. But the moment that truly broke me came during a therapy session that I had hoped would provide some relief from the overwhelming pain. I sat across from Dr. Peterson, a woman I had been seeing for 3 months, hoping she might help me navigate the wreckage of my life. I was telling her about how isolated I felt, how alone, how desperate for someone to understand what I was going through. She listened with what I thought was professional compassion. Then she leaned forward, her expression serious, and asked the question that would haunt me for months. Kaya, have you considered that you might be a little intense for people right now? Intense. The word hit me like a physical blow. I stared at her, unable to process what I was hearing. My therapist, the person who was supposed to help me heal, was telling me that my pain was too much, that my grief was excessive, that my emotional response to having my entire world destroyed was somehow inappropriate. What do you mean? I managed to whisper. Well, she continued, seeming oblivious to the devastation her words were causing. Sometimes when we are dealing with trauma, we can become overwhelming to others. Perhaps you need to consider moderating your emotional expression so that people feel more comfortable around you. I sat there in stunned silence. She wanted me to make my pain smaller so that others would not feel uncomfortable. She wanted me to hide my broken heart so that people would not have to deal with the messiness of my reality. She wanted me to pretend I was okay when I was anything but. That was the moment I realized the most terrifying truth of my life. No one was coming to save me. Not my family, who had decided I was too much trouble. Not my friends, who had determined I was too broken to fix. Not even the professional I was paying to help me heal. I was completely, utterly alone. So I made a decision that would change everything. I decided to save myself. The divorce settlement was substantial. My ex-husband, perhaps motivated by guilt or simply eager to be free, had been generous in his desperation to end our marriage quickly. I took every penny. Then I sold our house. The house where we had planned to grow old together, where we had painted rooms and planted gardens and dreamed of the future. I sold it all. The furniture we had carefully chosen together, the artwork we had collected on our travels, the books we had shared and discussed late into the night. Everything had to go. I could not bear to keep any reminders of the life that had been ripped away from me. With the money from the settlement and the house sale, I had enough to disappear. So I did. For 3 months, I vanished from everyone and everything I had ever known. But I did not run away to hide. I ran away to build. The mountains of Colorado had always called to me. There was something about the vast wilderness, the towering peaks, the endless sky that made me feel small in the best possible way. It reminded me that my problems, no matter how overwhelming they seemed, were just tiny specks in the grand scheme of the universe. I bought land in a remote area outside of Aspen. 40 acres of pristine wilderness, surrounded by national forest. It was raw, untouched, and perfect. Then I began to build. Not just buildings, though I did construct a main lodge and several smaller cabins. I built something far more important. I built a vision. A sanctuary. A place where women like me, divorced, damaged, dismissed, could come to remember who they were before the world told them they were broken. I called it the Wild Ember Retreat. Because even when everything else had been extinguished, there was still a spark burning inside each of us. A wild ember that refused to die. The first group was small. 5 women. All of us carrying the weight of betrayal, abandonment, and judgment. We had been called too emotional, too needy, too broken. We had been made to feel like our pain was inconvenient, and our healing was selfish. But in the mountains, surrounded by the raw beauty of nature, and the unconditional support of women who understood, we began to remember something important. We were not broken. We were breaking open. There is a difference, though the world often cannot see it. Breaking implies destruction, an ending, a loss of function. Breaking open implies transformation, expansion, the creation of space for something new to grow. Our program was unlike anything that existed. We combined trauma-informed therapy with art therapy, wilderness hiking, and evening fire circles where women could share their stories without fear of judgment. We offered yoga at sunrise, meditation by the stream, and cooking classes where we prepared nourishing meals together. But most importantly, we offered something that none of us had received in our regular lives. We offered acceptance. Complete, unconditional acceptance of wherever each woman was in her healing journey. Crying was welcomed. Anger was honored. Silence was respected. Rage was held with reverence. We created space for all of it because we understood that healing is not pretty or linear or convenient for others. Healing is messy and unpredictable and sometimes scary. But it is also beautiful and powerful and absolutely necessary. Word spread slowly at first. One woman told another, who told her sister, who told her friend. Women began arriving who had been dismissed by their families, abandoned by their friends, and failed by systems that were supposed to support them. They came carrying shame and self-doubt, and the crushing weight of other people's expectations. They left carrying something entirely different. They left carrying power. Within 2 years, the Wild Ember Retreat had a 6-month waiting list. Within 3 years, it was a full year. Women were traveling from across the country and around the world to experience what we had created. Not because we promised quick fixes or easy answers, but because we promised something far more valuable. We promised that their pain mattered. We promised that their healing was important. We promised that they were not too much, too broken, or too intense. We promised that they were exactly as they needed to be. The retreat became my life's work, my passion, my calling. I poured every ounce of my pain and every fragment of my healing into creating something beautiful from the ashes of my destroyed marriage. I hired a small but dedicated staff. Luna, my assistant, was a former client who had stayed to help other women find their way. Dr. Rivers, our trauma therapist, specialized in working with women who had been gaslit and emotionally abused. Marcus, our adventure guide, led hiking expeditions that challenged women to discover their physical and mental strength. Together, we created magic. We created transformation. We created a place where broken women could rise. But I never could have predicted what would happen one cold winter morning in my 4th year of operation. Luna knocked on my office door, her expression unusually serious. "Kaya, there is an application I think you should see personally." I looked up from my computer where I was reviewing program schedules for the upcoming season. What is unusual about it? Well, it is anonymous. No real name provided. Just initials. And the story. It sounds familiar somehow. She handed me the printed application, and I began to read. Name, JM, full name withheld for privacy. Age 34. Location, Denver, Colorado. Reason for applying. Recently divorced. Feeling emotionally overwhelmed and lost. Need space to heal and rediscover who I am outside of my marriage. Additional information. I heard about your retreat through a friend who attended last year. She said it changed her life. I am hoping it might change mine too. I have never done anything like this before, but I am desperate. I feel like I am drowning and everyone around me thinks I should just get over it already. I need to be somewhere where it is okay to not be okay. Email. jm.healing.journey@gmail.com. There was something about the tone, something about the phrasing, that made me pause. But it was the email address that made my blood run cold. I read it again. Then again. My hands began to shake as recognition dawned. jm.healing.journey@gmail.com. I knew those initials. Jade Morrison. The woman my ex-husband had left me for. The woman who had known he was married and had pursued him anyway. The woman who had attended parties at our house, eaten meals I had cooked, and smiled to my face while planning to steal my husband. The woman who, when I confronted her after discovering the affair, had looked me straight in the eyes and said, "He told me you were crazy. I see what he meant." And now she was applying to come to my retreat. My sanctuary. The place I had built from the ashes of the marriage she had helped destroy. I stared at the application for a long time. Feeling emotions I could not quite identify washing over me. Anger, yes. Shock, absolutely. But underneath those predictable reactions was something else. Something that surprised me. Curiosity. What could have happened to bring Jade Morrison to this place? What could have broken the woman who had seemed so confident, so superior, so certain that she was better than me? I did some research. It did not take long to piece together the story. My ex-husband had indeed married Jade after our divorce was finalized. They had had what appeared to be a lavish wedding based on the photos still visible on her social media accounts. But those photos stopped abruptly about 8 months ago. A little more digging revealed the truth. He had left her too. For someone even younger. A 23-year-old fitness influencer with a social media following and a complete lack of moral compass. The same man who had promised me forever, and then abandoned me without warning, had done the exact same thing to the woman he had abandoned me for. The pattern was clear now in a way it had not been when I was living inside of it. He was not capable of commitment. He was not capable of deep love. He was a user who moved from woman to woman, taking what he needed and discarding them when something shinier caught his attention. Jade had not won some great prize when she stole my husband. She had inherited a man who was fundamentally incapable of being faithful to anyone. And now she was learning what I had learned. She was experiencing the same betrayal, the same abandonment, the same crushing weight of realizing that the person you trusted most in the world was never trustworthy at all. I stared at her application for 3 days. Luna kept asking if I was going to respond, and I kept putting her off. Part of me wanted to reject the application immediately. This was the woman who had helped destroy my life. Why should I help her now that her life was destroyed? Part of me wanted to accept it just so I could confront her face to face. To finally get the apology I had never received. To make her acknowledge the pain she had caused. to watch her squirm with the discomfort of needing help from someone she had wronged so deeply. But there was a third part of me, a part that had been growing stronger through 4 years of helping other women heal, that recognized something important. This was not about her. This was about me. And the woman I had become. The woman I had become did not turn away people who were suffering, regardless of who they were or what they had done. The woman I had become understood that pain does not discriminate and healing is a universal human right. The woman I had become was strong enough to hold space for anyone who needed it, even someone who had once been my enemy. So I approved her application. Not for revenge. Not for confrontation. Not even for closure. I approved it because that is what the Wild Ember Retreat was for. For women who were drowning and needed a safe place to learn how to swim again. Even women who had once helped push me under the water. 2 weeks later, she arrived. I was standing on the porch of the main lodge when the shuttle van pulled up, and I watched her step out. She was wearing oversized dark sunglasses despite the overcast sky. Her hair was shorter than it had been 4 years ago, and she had lost weight. Not the healthy kind of weight loss that comes from taking care of yourself. The hollow, haunted kind that comes from stress and heartbreak, and not being able to eat. I recognized it because I had worn it myself not so long ago. She pulled a small suitcase from the van and looked around nervously. Our eyes met briefly, and I saw the flash of recognition and panic cross her face. But to her credit, she did not run. She approached the check-in desk where Luna was waiting with her warm, welcoming smile. "You must be JM," Luna said brightly. "Welcome to the Wild Ember Retreat. I am Luna, and I will be your program coordinator during your stay." "Thank you," Jade replied quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. I watched from a distance as Luna went through the standard orientation process, explaining the daily schedule, the meal times, the various therapy options, the hiking trails, and the evening fire circles. Jade nodded along, but I could see she was not really listening. She was trying to figure out if I was going to expose her, confront her, or kick her out. I did none of those things. Instead, I walked over and extended my hand. "Welcome," I said simply. "I am Kaya, the founder of the retreat. I hope you find what you are looking for here." She stared at my outstretched hand for a long moment, clearly shocked that I was treating her like any other guest. Finally, she shook it. "Thank you," she whispered again. And that was it. No accusations. No confrontation. No dramatic scene. Just a welcome. Because this retreat was not about my past. It was about healing. And healing begins with radical acceptance, not righteous anger. For the first few days, Jade barely participated. She attended the required group sessions but said nothing. She joined the hiking expeditions, but walked alone at the back of the group. She came to meals but ate in silence, avoiding eye contact with everyone. The other women in the group tried to include her, as women often do instinctively when they recognize someone who is struggling. But she politely deflected every invitation and kindness. I did not push. I had learned through years of this work that people heal on their own timeline. Some women arrive ready to dive deep immediately. Others need time to feel safe before they can be vulnerable. Jade clearly fell into the second category. She was carrying shame and guilt along with her grief, and that combination can be particularly paralyzing. I continued to treat her exactly like every other guest. I offered her the same warmth, the same support, the same unconditional acceptance. Not because I had forgiven her, necessarily, but because forgiveness is a process, and healing cannot wait for perfection. The breakthrough came on her 5th night during our evening fire circle. Fire circles were sacred at the Wild Ember Retreat. Women sat in a circle around a large fire pit, sharing stories, fears, hopes, and revelations. There were only 2 rules. Speak from the heart and hold space for others without judgment. That night, we had 7 women in the circle. Sarah, a recent widow learning to live without her partner of 20 years. Michelle, recovering from an abusive marriage that had left her questioning her worth. Diana, processing the end of a long-term relationship that had slowly eroded her sense of self. Carmen, dealing with the aftermath of discovering her husband's gambling addiction had destroyed their financial security. Rebecca, healing from childhood trauma that had affected every relationship in her adult life. Jade, sitting quietly in her usual spot. And me. We had been sharing for about an hour when Diana began talking about the shame she felt for staying in her toxic relationship as long as she had. I keep thinking I should have known better, she said, tears reflecting the firelight. I should have seen the signs earlier. I should have been stronger. Several women nodded in recognition. The burden of self-blame is almost universal among women who have been hurt by people they trusted. I feel like such a fool, Diana continued. Like everyone must think I am stupid for letting it go on so long. That was when Jade finally spoke. Her voice was so quiet at first that we had to strain to hear her. I was the other woman once. The words hung in the air like smoke from the fire. I convinced myself that I was not the villain in the story, that he was going to leave his wife anyway, that I was not really doing anything wrong because their marriage was already over in his mind. She paused, staring into the flames. I told myself that she must have been a terrible wife if he was willing to cheat on her, that she probably deserved it somehow. My heart was pounding, but I kept my face neutral, my breathing steady. When she confronted me after she found out, I was cruel to her. I said things I cannot take back. I made her feel like it was her fault that her husband was a cheater and a liar. Tears were flowing freely down her face now. I was so self-righteous, so convinced that I was better than her, that I was special, that what we had was real, and what they had was fake. She looked up from the fire, her eyes meeting mine across the circle. But he left me too. For someone younger and prettier and newer. Just like he left her. And suddenly I understood. I understood everything. The silence around the fire was profound. I understood that I had not won some great love. I had just been the next victim in line. I understood that she had not been crazy or difficult or any of the things he told me she was. She had just been a woman who loved someone who was incapable of loving her back. Her voice broke completely then. And I understood that by helping him hurt her, I had hurt myself too. Because if he could betray her so easily, he could betray anyone, including me. She buried her face in her hands and sobbed. Deep, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere so profound that I felt them in my own chest. I did not know what I was walking into when I applied to come here, she continued through her tears. I thought I was going to be anonymous. I thought I could just heal quietly and leave without anyone knowing who I was. She looked at me again, her expression raw and broken and honest. But now I realize I have never felt more seen than I do right here, right now. And I am sorry. I am so sorry for what I did. For what I said. For the pain I caused. The other women in the circle were crying too, moved by the raw honesty and courage it had taken for Jade to share her truth. But I did not say anything. I simply reached into the basket beside my chair and pulled out one of the journals we kept there for moments like this. I walked around the fire and handed it to her. Write, I said softly. Write everything you need to say. To her. To him. To yourself. Write it all down, and then decide what you want to do with it. She took the journal with shaking hands and nodded. Because this was not really about me and her. This was about her and her own healing. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can give someone is not absolution, but the opportunity to forgive themselves. The next morning, I found an envelope that had been slipped under my office door. Inside was a letter written in Jade's careful handwriting. Dear Kaya, I do not expect you to forgive me. I do not expect you to forget what I did or how I treated you. I do not expect anything from you at all. But I need you to know that I have spent the last year drowning in guilt and regret about my role in destroying your marriage. Not because I lost my husband, though that pain is real, but because I realized what I had taken from you. I took your trust in love itself. I took your faith in people. I took your sense of safety in your own home. I took things that cannot be given back. But sitting in that circle last night, watching you create space for other women to heal, including me, I realized something else. You took all of that pain and loss and turned it into something beautiful. You took the worst thing that ever happened to you and used it to help other people survive the worst things that ever happened to them. You took being broken and turned it into breaking others free. I do not know if I will ever be able to forgive myself for what I did to you. But I want you to know that seeing who you have become has changed something fundamental in me. I want to be someone who helps heal instead of someone who helps hurt. I want to be someone who builds up instead of someone who tears down. I do not know if that is possible for someone like me, but being here has given me hope that maybe it is. Thank you for letting me stay. Thank you for showing me what grace looks like in action. Thank you for proving that broken people can become whole again, and that whole people can choose to help others break free from their own cages. With profound gratitude and respect, Jade. I read the letter 3 times before folding it and putting it in my desk drawer. Then I went to find her. She was sitting by the stream that ran through our property, staring at the water with her journal open in her lap. "Can I sit?" I asked. She nodded without looking up. We sat in silence for several minutes, listening to the water flow over the rocks and the birds calling to each other in the trees. "I have been angry at you for 4 years," I finally said. She nodded, still not looking at me. "Not just angry. Furious. Devastated. Betrayed." "I know. But sitting here now, I realize that holding on to that anger has become like carrying a heavy stone. It served its purpose for a while. It gave me fuel to build all of this. But now it is just weighing me down." I picked up a small rock from beside the stream and turned it over in my hands. "I am not ready to be your friend. I may never be ready for that. But I am ready to put this stone down." I tossed the rock into the water and watched it sink beneath the surface. "I forgive you. Not for your sake, but for mine. Because forgiveness is not about saying what you did was okay. It is about saying I am not going to let what you did control my life anymore." She finally looked at me then, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "Do not thank me yet," I said with a small smile. "Because I have a proposition for you." She looked confused. "Stay. Not as a guest. As a volunteer. Help other women who are where you were. Where we both were. Help them understand that they are not broken. They are breaking free." Her mouth dropped open in shock. "You cannot be serious." "I am completely serious. We need someone who understands what it feels like to be the villain in your own story. Someone who knows what it is like to realize you have caused pain and want to make amends. Someone who can help women untangle their guilt and shame so they can find their way to healing." "But I am the one who. You are the one who made a terrible mistake and learned from it. You are the one who caused harm and wants to prevent others from doing the same. You are the one who has been broken down and is willing to help others build back up." I stood up and brushed the dirt off my jeans. "Think about it. Your stay here is supposed to last 2 more days. If you want to extend it and transition into a volunteer role, let me know." I started to walk away, then turn back. The women who need our help most are not always the innocent victims, Jade. Sometimes they are the ones who have been hurt so badly that they have learned to hurt others. Sometimes the most powerful healing happens when we help the helpers learn to heal too. 2 days later, she knocked on my office door. "I would like to stay," she said simply. "Good. Luna will get you set up with volunteer housing and orientation. Welcome to the team." That was 18 months ago. Today, Jade Morrison is one of our most valuable team members. She runs a support group specifically for women who are dealing with guilt and shame around their own role in relationship destruction. Women who have had affairs, who have been emotionally abusive, who have made choices that hurt people they cared about. She helps them understand that accountability and self-forgiveness can coexist. That making amends is important, but drowning in shame helps no one. That healing is possible for everyone, including people who have caused harm. The irony is not lost on me. The woman who helped break me has become instrumental in helping other broken women heal. The woman who once dismissed my pain now spends her days holding space for other women in pain. The woman who thought I was crazy now tells people that I am one of the strongest, most compassionate people she has ever met. But perhaps the most shocking thing of all is that she was right about one thing, all those years ago. I was crazy. Crazy enough to turn my worst nightmare into my greatest triumph. Crazy enough to build something beautiful from the ashes of my destroyed marriage. Crazy enough to welcome my former enemy into my sanctuary and watch her transform into an ally. Crazy enough to believe that broken women can rise, heal, and help others do the same. They called me too broken after my divorce. They said I was too emotional, too intense, too much. They abandoned me when I needed them most and made me feel like my pain was somehow wrong. But they were wrong about everything. I was not too broken. I was perfectly broken. Broken in exactly the way I needed to be to create something that would help thousands of other women realize they are not broken either. They are breaking open. They are breaking free. They are breaking the cycle of shame and judgment that keeps women small and silent and separated from each other. At the Wild Ember Retreat, we do not fix women. We do not try to put them back together the way they were before. Instead, we help them understand that they were never actually broken. They were just breaking out of containers that were too small to hold their full power. And when women remember their power, whether they are the ones who were betrayed or the ones who did the betraying, magic happens. Healing happens. Transformation happens. Community happens. Love happens. Real love. The kind that does not betray or abandon or judge. The kind that says, I see you exactly as you are, and you belong here. The kind that turns enemies into allies and pain into purpose. The kind that proves that sometimes the most beautiful flowers grow from the deepest wounds. Every morning, I wake up in the mountains of Colorado surrounded by women who were told they were too much, too broken, too intense. And every evening, I watch those same women discover that they are exactly enough. Enough to heal. Enough to grow. Enough to rise. Enough to help others do the same. They called me too broken after my divorce. So I created a place where broken women could come to remember that broken is not the end of the story. It is just the beginning of becoming whole. And guess who applied anonymously to join us in that wholeness? Yeah, her. The woman who helped shatter me is now helping others piece themselves back together. And if that is not proof that miracles are real, I do not know what is. If this story touched your heart and inspired you to see your own pain differently, please subscribe to our channel for more stories of transformation, healing, and the incredible power of turning our deepest wounds into our greatest gifts. Your support helps us share these important messages with women who need to hear them most. Hit that subscribe button and join our community of warriors who refuse to stay broken.